Friends, we're live. Building a bit of a structure in life right now, and I think for a lot of people, a bit of a schedule has been beneficial. I've found. Oh, look, I'm wearing my Chael Sonnen American Gangster shirt. Got two Chael shirts. Paid retail for them too. I'm a legit fan of that guy, not just as a fighter, but as a dude too. He's a very good guy. But yeah, some structure. Structure is good. You don't have to schedule your day by the minute. That's probably going to give you more stress than you need, but a little structure. Get up, shower, or have a bit of a day. I did a little podcast with my buddy Aaron the other day, and he fully gets dressed as if he's going to work. That works for a lot of people. For me, a little yoga in the morning with my wife, and then try to get this every day. A little sit and chat every day. Today, I wanted to chat a little bit about flow, right? The state of flow. People are aware of this concept. I actually remember the very first time I met Joe Rogan. He invited me on his podcast. He invited me on my birthday, incidentally. And I don't think that's a coincidence. That's the type of guy he is. The next time I was in LA, which was shortly after, and I told him about this guy, Stephen Kotler, in this book called The Rise of Superman, which I read on the flight down there, incidentally. And then I was like, this is really cool. And I sat down. Joe was like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, dude, have you read this book? It was like an hour of our conversation, but it was so fascinating. This idea of flow is a state. It's a psychological state, but it's also a physiological state, right? It's a state in which you get pushed to be at your maximum capacity. There's certain requirements for you to hit this state of flow. Mr. Orange, hi, a couple of hellos from people. But what happens is the brain kind of releases a cocktail of neurotransmitters. It's real. This is chemistry. It's brain chemistry. So let's go back a second. Flow state, what are we talking about? Have you ever played any kind of sport or done any kind of activity that you are is right at the level of your skill set? Could be playing an instrument, it could be speaking in public, it could be anything. It could be playing football, whatever. And sometimes you hit that zone. Some people call it the zone. Some people call it flow. There's been many names of it because this is something that humans have always more or less experienced. So people have talked about it, the divine, connecting with the divine. Freestyle rappers or a comedian, a good comedian or whatever, there's the feelings of uncertainty before they hit it, and then they get it and everything just starts to happen. So you're playing that sport or you're doing that art form, and for whatever reason, that on that day, everything you touch goes in the net, or everything you say is funny if you're a comedian, or when your Quadrex says playing lead guitar for hours by ear, big time flow state, best feeling ever. Yeah, when he says best feeling ever, it's because it's an incredibly pleasant experience. It's full immersion, full connectivity to something. I actually spoke with a psych professor on my YouTube channel a couple of years back. And he actually examined the brain during that sort of state of improvisation when somebody is really connected to something. So I forget his name briefly, but it'll come to me. Good dude, really good dude, really smart. I connect with a lot of psychology people, and I find them fascinating. Their study of specific ways the brain works and stuff, and dedicating your life to that is so neat. But so he analyzed brain activity in jazz musicians when they are soloing, or they're sort of jamming together, and they all sort of connect on that wavelength. And it's a fascinating thing. So in this book, why am I talking about this today? Because I did a breakdown. Sugar Sean O'Malley yesterday, he posted something of him doing jiu-jitsu. Now, it could have been a sequence that he had been training that day. It probably was. Or it could have also just been him allowing it to unfold. Either one is still, you can still be in that state as you do it. So I saw Sugar Sean doing that, and I did a breakdown. People seem to really respond to it, seem to really like it, because it's something we all have experienced, where the puck, like I said, the puck just all goes in the net. You're freestyle rapping, everything you say is hilarious or funny or brilliant. That's that state, and it's very pleasant because of the cocktail of neurotransmitters are in Oliver just got back from walking the dog, getting food, and Robin is live. Yeah, buddy. Yep, good times. So yeah, the brain goes into this pleasant state where you are fully immersed in the activity to such a degree that your connection to time itself changes. Now, that sounds anecdotal and exaggerated, but you know this to be true inherently, where you're like, you get in a car and you drive and you're like, wow, man, how long have we been driving? 90 minutes. What? It feels like 10 minutes. Or you're doing something you don't like, at some shitty thing at work that you've had to do at some point in your life, and you look at the clock and it looks like it's barely moving. We interpret time differently on a very regular basis. Anyone who smokes marijuana, you've experienced that, or had altered your mind in any other way, you experience that. Time is not finite. Even the speed at which a second hand appears to move is different to you during the day, right? So think about Irish living in Thailand saying hello, hello. Thanks for joining us. So you are starting to interpret something differently. So this is an interesting aspect from my job, and from something that I find fascinating. I'm very fortunate. I've sort of moved my job towards something that I find incredibly curious and fascinating, and always will. And when we are looking at what's happening in a fight, in any type of martial arts, any type of contest, but particularly dangerous contest. Actually, let's remove it from motorcycles. Open and 2 or 3 flips on a motorcycle. So reconnecting. If I have cut out there at all, please just accept it, because what else can we do? We've got somebody who said, just finished my workout, now seeing this live. Good stuff. Thanks, guys. I'm just, before I connect back to the flipping motorcycle, it does say it's reconnecting here, and there's a circle on it. So I'm just hanging in here for a second. Gaucho, before the coronavirus outbreak, China bought most of medical supplies around the world. Come on, man. Don't be reading like fucking conspiracy theory shit. It's not good for you. It's not real. Just do not be doing that. I don't know if you guys are still here or not, because my screen appears to claim that you are not, but I'm going to keep spreading the idea just in case. Maybe you're watching this later. We're back, says Rector. You're good. It just tuttered for a second. We are. Okay, well, cool. Anyways, my like upside down. Or let's take another very dangerous activity, free diving. So these people will hold their breath and free dive, sometimes holding something that will take them way down deep into the water. Or free climbing, where for 6 hours you will scale a mountain, seeing the patterns unfold. That type of flow is not just your body. Now your eyes are starting to see and connect to the textures and understand, and almost understand the route you're going to go as you're doing it. You're almost watching yourself do it. So athletes and artists who do things of that nature, to that dangerous nature, they will literally, this is how and why Kotler was able to explore this and study it more deeply here in the 21st century, is because these guys, the act of doing their sport, if they deviate from that flow state, from that smooth zone, they probably will die. Right? So it's a time where we would have to look at a violin player and try to understand and hope he was educated or poetic or scientific enough to explain to us his experience. We can now study it by studying a free climber and studying their behavior and how they act, and studying their brain activity and all these different things. Because if they deviate from that state of everything being almost euphoric, they will literally die. They will fall to their death. And so fighting at a high level in a cage in front of 15,000 people and 500,000 watching on TV has that level of danger, intensity, being pushed to the max. And in most cases, and this is conjecture based on my studying over a long time, as well as doing it myself. In most cases, a good fight, they are both accessing this brain state, right? So what I'm saying is that fighting, that as we watch it, actually takes place in a altered consciousness, in an altered brain space, in a physiologically and chemically altered situation. It sounds heavy. It sounds like a big nonsensical shit that Robin Black talks about. But if we look at it a different way, altered brain state is not as heavy as it sounds. Again, if you consume coffee, you are altering the biology, the chemistry of your brain. If you smoke marijuana, you are altering the chemistry of your brain. If you are exhausted, your brain performs differently. So I'm not saying, as much as I see fighting at the highest level as something that has a deeper essence than a lot of things, although not a lot of things, has a deep essence the way that great music does. I'm also saying that it happens in an altered brain state. Now, what am I getting at here? Our judgment of it is happening in a fairly normal or typical brain state. So we're actually not connected to it. When I analyze fights and when I commentate, I have the pleasure, I'm not bragging, this is just my experience, of doing it in a flow state type thing. And so that's the reason I'm starting to see why I connect to it differently, both verbally and then when I'm drawing and when I do all this stuff, is because likely artists who are doing it in a state of flow, a physiological and chemical state of the brain. That's how I'm doing my job. Also, when I say this often, I'm not trying to be critical of other people, but to analyze anything, you must do that thing, and you must do it a lot. It is not possible to sit back and watch doctors talk about surgery long enough that you connect the words and then you can be a surgery analyst. That is not be really analyzing something. That is puppeting um, and and um, and imitating an analyst. Fighting is very much the same thing. If Matt Serra, I'd say his name recently as sort of a reference to like you, and other times I'll say if Rampage Jackson, but I go through little phases where I use the particular great accomplished fighter. If Matt Serra decides he wants to analyze jujitsu, he's going to do it on a much different level than whoever watches him do it for 3 years and then uses the same language when they say the same things, because you connect to it. By doing the thing, you understand it in a different way. Now, does that matter? Does anyone care about analyzing martial arts? That's what I do for a living. Very few people do it. It's not a big, important job. If you don't necessarily see, we're not going to probably save lives by doing this. But why am I using this example? Is because it applies to everything. If you want to truly understand anything, you must do it. And it'll be something I use in a 1 minute philosophy and coming up in the future. But you have to do it, because just knowing what it is when you see it, you cannot connect to that true activity that is happening. Nautilus. It didn't get my mind back until I quit weed, and alcohol is nobody's friend. Yeah. Hey, being clear headed is a very powerful thing. You know, um, a lot of people celebrate, getting wasted and altering mind state. You know what also is a powerful mind state is being mentally clear. Sleeping well and exercising. Nautilus said, "I smoked weed for 30 years." Yeah, and it sounds like once you remove that, you got a certain clarity, and there's a beauty in that. There is. Of course, exploring different things at different times is good for people, or can be good, but there's dangers, of course, as well. But so flow is this thing. We all know what it is. It's very real. It's chemical. It's biological. It's physiological. It happens. Your emotion controls your brain chemistry, and your brain chemistry controls your experience. Not only your emotion, but what you feel and what you see, and your senses will affect your brain chemistry. And your brain chemistry will affect your behavior, your interpretation of the world around you. And so flow ultimately, if you go back, it's on the YouTube channel, like 1 or 2 videos back. If you just go to videos and look back, there's Sugar Sean doing jujitsu. Many, if not most people who have done jujitsu for any length of time, feel that. So there's a little clip on it where you actually miss something because of the shape of it as I changed it. But as he's moving, he does an omoplata, and then he goes to dig under the back. And I had a little arrow where you see the arm, and dig under the back and then jam his leg in there. And that's when you're in that state of flow where you're sort of being ultra creative and ultra connected to the moments. It's a lot easier to do something in jiu-jitsu, which makes a lot of sense, or any type of fighting, which makes a lot of sense, which is, think of 2 basic principles. I want you to be in a particular shape. Now that shape might be your hand down so I can hit you, or the shape might be, to be covered, or, I may want you to be in a particular shape, right? Design, like, um, structure. So sometimes I will force you into that structure. So if I want to take you back, I'll pull you and get to your back, arm drag, and shove my arm in there. And if I want to choke you, I want you to be in this particular shape where the shape of my body now fills that space. I can do that by forcing you into a shape, but it is probably a lot easier and more frustrating and frightening in a way if I just fill the gaps. So if I want to choke you, if your head is here, if we just sort of float it all in and fill the gaps, that's fluid movement. That's sort of an almost liquid movement, which is way easier to get when you're in that sort of psychologically lit, but also simultaneously relaxed state. So, and you see it all the time, and we try to identify what it is and find just the right verbiage. Why, when Damien Maya snakes into somebody's back, or why, when Wonder Boy is a leg. And somebody literally said Damien Maya movement exactly as I was saying it. But it's not only in jiu-jitsu, when Wonder Boy throws a hook kick and he just kind of plops it up there and it doesn't, there's a combination of intensity and relaxation. And that's easier to achieve when you're in that psychological and physiological state of flow. And that's why you see this beautiful fluid movement. Matter what. Somebody said, I play video games so much I get into a good flow state when I'm lost in racing, Sim. Yes, video games seem to be able to do that, and it's one of the reasons they're quite addicting, and you can end up sucking a lot of time of your life, but also being in a state of enjoyment is because they often will have that capacity to kind of connect you to that situation, to that flow state. But all things are. You are at your best because you're deeply immersed, you are truly in the moments, and you're connected to what is, the real what is, not your interpretation of something or your fear or anxiety or happiness based biases or whatever. Nothing else exists in these moments, right? Greetings from Canada, Thomas. I am also in Canada. This is Stratford, Ontario, right behind me. This is my kitchen. Um, Hello to everybody. The MMA analyst in the game, big fan from Dagestan. Thank you. Thank you. But the deep immersion. So you're immersed in what is, not your biases of it, right? So you get a clean interpretation of the realities of the situation. And often the realities are very often are much better than you think they are. There's always a way, right? There's always a way until there isn't. Whether you're fighting or you're striving for something or you're trying to fix something or cure something, or there's always a way until there isn't. And as long as you haven't given up on it, which in that state, that pleasant, psychologically lit state, you won't. So when we watch fighting, often we'll say, oh, that guy saw this and then chose that. Something I talked to Ryan Bader about. I think it'll come up today, my chat with Bellator double champ Ryan Bader, about how in these moments we'll say he saw this and then he decided to do X, Y, or Z. But in truth, it just happens by itself. And that's that state too. You can literally, it feels like you're watching yourself rap or fight or build something or run. A lot of runners reach that real pleasure. Lately, I've been around 5K. I'm like, yeah, I feel like wrapping it up. And my wife wants to keep running. And I'm a good runner, but it's because she's finding this sort of comfort in it where it's an enjoyable experience, right? So this is something we all want to do more of. And there's lots of books on it. The Rise of Superman was the one I talked to Joe about on his podcast. Flow is the original one. A Russian gentleman, I forget his name. It's a tricky name to pronounce, and I often fuck it up. But it's just called Flow. Wonderful book. Feels Good Man here says, I've experienced flow in drumming, skating, and fighting, and to this day, I don't know how I get there. I've gotten runner's high. I'm guessing that's very similar to flow, says Thomas. Yes, it is. That's what it is. Runner's high. So, yeah, Feels Good Man said, I don't know how to get there. There are a number of requirements to achieve a state of flow. I actually have to sign off because I've got a chat with Daniel Weichel. We will pick this up tomorrow. We will pick up how. So I'm going to start my chat tomorrow or later today if the time makes itself. How to achieve flow state in an activity, right? Doesn't mean we can all do it, but you can train to do it. Hi, Robin. I'm selling a slightly used roll of toilet paper for $19.99. Limited time only, says Dane's son. No deal. Nobody ain't paying you $19.95. As long as we'll start with how to be able to access a flow state. Well, fighting is my specialty. My wife is a singer and a performer, an actress. It doesn't have to be gender-based. And you may be a runner or an artist or whatever. We're not going to be able to do it every time, but there is a process to it. So we're going to talk about that either tomorrow or later today. This has been fun. It's been really fun. Brave says you're a triple threat, Erica. It's been really fun doing this every day. It really has. Please check out, I've got to break down a couple things back. It is Sugar Sean and Gegard Mousasi. Gegard really, really, really being brutal from the top position. Please check it out. Do you think Tony Ferguson's weird training is where he finds his flow the quickest? Hugo. Tony Ferguson is an artist. That true artist. That's an aspect of it. And we will talk about that. I will write that one down too. So why does Stephen King write every day? Because it's a pleasant experience for him. He sits down, he writes pretty quickly. He's in that flow. He's trained himself to access it. So talk about it more tomorrow or later on today. Thank you guys so much. This has been a real pleasure doing this every day. Much love. Blackout.